Hey, welcome to Cosmic Comics. In this episode, I'm going to look at what we know about Kyle Richmond, better known as Nighthawk's, life prior to his being recruited into Squadron Sinister by the Grand Master. All the source material for this video is listed below the fold, with the bulk coming from The Defenders issue 32 and Marvel Team Up issue 101. This tale begins during Kyle's early childhood education. Kyle came from a rich family where he was schooled privately by a governess. One day she came to him speechless and in tears. Without saying a word, she took him to see his mother, Penelope, who had been the victim of an unspecified accident. Kyle's father, Arthur, was away on business, as was generally the case. Still a child, Kyle sat at his mother's side and watched her die. I imagine this entire process had to have taken place rather fast, and this is the reason why the governess had taken him to his mother's room. It would be great if after 40 years, Marvel would take the time to reveal what happened, why nobody seemingly called for help, and why this rich man's family couldn't save its matriarch. Arthur Richmond arrived home from Europe in time for his wife's funeral. Unable or unwilling to look after his son, Arthur decided that Kyle needed more stability in his life than he could provide, and enrolled him into the West Haven boarding school for boys. After his father left, Kyle shed a single tear that would set him on a destructive path for years to come. The other boys at the school saw his weakness and began calling him a crybaby. Kyle lashed out at them with physical violence, getting into his first fight. While at West Haven, he was bullied by more than his fellow students. He was singled out as a troublemaker by the faculty and was repeatedly told how they would love to expel him. Kyle knew it was his father's money that protected him from being tossed out, but when he finally voiced this opinion at the age of 17, he was slapped across the face by the principal, who went on to tell Kyle how much he disgusted him, and that it was a shame that his father was throwing away his money on such a lost cause. Kyle had had enough, and struck the principal hard enough to send him into the air and break his desk. As Kyle storms out, the principal threatens him by shouting that Kyle will never get into college without his letter of recommendation. He goes as far as to say that he would rather see Kyle shot in Vietnam than detracting from a college campus. For anybody that didn't have the financial clout of Kyle's family, this would have been a very real threat, because if Kyle couldn't get into college, then there was a chance that he would be drafted into the army. But Kyle's family was rich, and with wealth comes privilege, and Kyle was capable of getting into the school of his choice. Kyle chose to attend the small campus of Grayburn University in upstate New York, where he enjoyed a newfound sense of freedom. During Kyle's sophomore year, June of 1968 to be specific, Kyle met an unwealthy freshman named Mindy Williams. For the first time in his life, Kyle found somebody who provided him with warmth and inspiration. It was the closest thing he had ever known to love since his mother had passed away. With Mindy in his life, Kyle made a renewed effort to improve upon himself and take college seriously. Kyle soon found himself in over his head. Years of neglecting his studies left Kyle incapable of understanding his coursework. He gave up on the academics and turned to drinking. A few minor discrepancies here I want to touch on. If Kyle was 21, then it seems likely that he had completed at least 2 years of college at this point. We know that he had made it through at least 1 year because he was a sophomore when he met Mindy. It seems odd that after 2 or 3 years of college-level classes that Kyle would suddenly start having academic problems, while simultaneously stating that having Mindy in his life pushed him to excel. After a night of drinking, Kyle wrapped his car around a tree, and Mindy died in the crash. At least that's what Kyle's father wanted him to believe. Behind the scenes, Arthur Richmond unleashed an army of attorneys to protect the heir of the family fortune. According to Mindy, Kyle had seen her bloodied body lying in the road. I need to stop and point out that Mindy states that her body had been lying in the road, but both times where we the reader are shown her body at the site of the accident, she is actually lying in the grass. Anyway, Kyle had seen Mindy's bloodied body at the scene of the accident and assumed that she had died. He had no reason to doubt that fact because Kyle's father ensured that was what everybody told Kyle. Arthur wanted to avoid any scandal that might damage the family name and thought Mindy was too low class for his son, so he paid Mindy a formidable sum of money to leave. Arthur hoped that if his son thought Mindy was dead, it would force Kyle to grow up. Meanwhile, Kyle was expelled from school. His father offered to pull some strings, but Kyle turned down his father's assistance and got his draft notice almost as soon as he left school. Kyle felt that both his father and the school system had let him down, and now he was prepared to let Uncle Sam take over his life. Instead of being shipped off to Vietnam, Kyle Richmond was turned out onto the street. Kyle had a heart murmur that disqualified him from military service. The same day that Kyle was turned down from military service, his last obligation to anybody in the world was wiped out. His father's plane crashed at JFK. Later that night, he saw the crash on the news, and for the second time in his life, he watched one of his parents die before his eyes. At the funeral, Pennyworth, Arthur's right-hand man, approached Kyle about Kyle taking over Richmond Enterprises, but Kyle abdicated his financial throne to Pennyworth, whom he said should take over in his place. Kyle moved on to a life of jet-setting about the globe and searching for a cure for his heart murmur. To help in his search, Kyle kept a lavishly equipped lab where he liked to putter around a bit. Late one moonlit night, he ran across an old book on alchemy. Unknown to Kyle at the time, this volume had been put in place by the Grand Master. Inexplicably, Kyle was drawn towards one particular formula. Several hours of hard labor later, Kyle had finished his foul-smelling concoction. Kyle downed the potion in one gulp, and almost instantaneously he felt the results. Whenever the moon shone, Kyle had increased prowess and physical abilities. He soon began a rigorous program of physical activity designed to maximize his newfound abilities. At an unknown point in time, Kyle began preparing to become Nighthawk. One night, while returning home with stolen parts for his Hawk plane, Kyle was once again involved in a tragic accident. He struck a pedestrian crossing the road. Kyle approaches the body and screams for someone to call an ambulance. After seeing that the man wasn't killed, Kyle took off from the scene of the accident on foot, most likely afraid of getting caught with the stolen goods inside of his truck. The man he struck ended up being Yondroth, the alien-trained techno-wizard whom the defenders would face off against multiple times. Sometime after this event took place, the Hawk plane was completed, and for kicks, Kyle joined up as a villain with the Squadron Sinister. His villainy didn't stop there either. I'll cover Nighthawk's transition from crook to caper in another episode of Cosmic Comics. Looking back on this story, I'm a bit disappointed that after his many years, we still don't know what took place during the time after Kyle Richmond drank the alchemical tincture and when he decided to team up with Squadron Sinister. We still don't know why Kyle decided to become Nighthawk. Am I missing something here? Does this story exist, but I've missed it somewhere along the way? If so, please let me know in the comments below. There is definitely a story to be told in this small but very important gap in Kyle Richmond's life, but since Nighthawk has been an established character for approximately 50 years, I'm not expecting an explanation from Marvel anytime soon. Thanks for joining me. I always appreciate anybody hitting those buttons below. I'm out.